I mean, I've seen a lot of bird strikes come through, and those birds, yeah, they're soft, but when that blade is flying, it turns into like a rock, essentially. And without the DSX, it does a number on the blade. It usually leaves a pretty harsh indention into the spar, or it'll kind of hit the blade skin. It'll puncture the blade skin. We've had customers with the DSX coating actually hit, and I think it was this year, he hit a duck. He hit about a 3-pound duck. And being that the coating was on there, it protected that spar and never even damaged it. So He hit the duck, obliterated it, of course, and then after he landed, he went up there and was picking small bone fragments out of the DSX. But wild. It didn't harm the blade a bit. The DSX was there and it kept it protected.
Welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS in partnership with Vertical Magazine. In this episode of the Vertical MRO Podcast, I sit down with Seth Hardage, owner of Rotorcraft Repair and Manufacturing, to uncover the vital importance of preventative maintenance in aviation. Seth introduces their groundbreaking product, Dragon Skin Extreme, an advanced rotor blade leading-edge protective coating designed to combat erosion and corrosion. Throughout the conversation, Seth shares his inspiring journey in the Rotorcraft community, offering valuable insights into the differences between erosion and corrosion and the impact of environmental factors on rotor blade lifespan. He also discusses the significance of strong leadership in cultivating a positive company culture in today's industry. Join us as we explore industry challenges such as recruitment and retention and discover innovative solutions driving the future of rotorcraft maintenance. Thank you to our sponsors Airbus and Precision Aviation Group. Hey, welcome to the Vertical MRO Podcast. I'm today's host, John Gray. I have a really cool conversation in store for today, talking about something that is really important. I'd start by saying it's preventative maintenance, although our guest, Seth Hardage, may disagree with that. In some ways, it's a lot more in depth and involved than just saying it's preventative maintenance. But it's an excellent product from a company who's done some really cool stuff and has been a great supporter of us, the HeliCASTS platform, and some of the things that we're looking at doing. So before I get too far into talking about it, I'd like to welcome Seth Hardage to the Vertical MRO Podcast. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you, John?
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I know you've been on before. It's always an honor to have a returning guest come back to talk and give us some experience and insight since the last time you came on. So if you could, before we get again too deep into the weeds and talking about this product, which again is really cool, can you give us some insight as to who you are, where you work, what you do, and how you got into aviation?
Yeah, of course. My name's Seth Hardage. I'm the owner of Rotorcraft Repair and Manufacturing. We're located in Pocahontas, Arkansas. I started out early in my career in the ag industry, actually working on turbine engines and ag cats, thrushes, air tractors, and primarily just on the engine section. Can't tell you how many times we'd go out into the fields, have to, aircraft go down. We'd be out there in the field getting it all back out. And then as that progressed, I got into kind of the corporate jet world, started dabbling into that and just maintaining corporate jets, got into a little bit of airline work, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. And then when I was down in South Louisiana is when I got into helicopters. And that was a whole new world, and it really intrigued me. So I just kept pursuing it, and it just kept growing from there. And then I had known about, there was a rotor blade shop located in Black Rock, Arkansas. I had known about it. I went to school with the previous owner's son. I just didn't know a lot about it. So then I just started asking questions because I started working on some of his personal aircraft. He had some old World War II BT-13s.
That's cool.
He had a T-28. So he just had a lot of projects that I would work on. So curiosity got me, and I started asking questions about the rotor blade facility. And so then he shook me. He showed it to me. He said, well, I'm retiring. I'm getting out of it. So curiosity got me, so I said, I want to give it a whirl. So we did like a 1 year kind of a partnership deal. I kind of managed it for him, and then officially in 2020, my wife and I purchased it, and then we moved it from Black Rock to Pocahontas, which is about 20 minutes apart. And it has just been growing ever since.
That's so cool.
When it first started, it was just myself working it, and then we slowly kept hiring more and more, and it's really become an incredible organization now.
Yeah, the stuff you guys have done is amazing. And, again, coming from to where you are, we were offline, we were talking about small town living.
Yep.
I live in a small town myself, and it's got some challenges, but some huge advantages.
Right.
I love going to the grocery store, and it takes a long time sometimes because you run into all the folks there, but it's great,
exactly
right?
Yeah, no, it is. That's what, my wife and I will say, well, we got to run and go grab some milk. Well, the idea was it's 5 minutes. Well, 45 minutes later,
yeah,
you have a discussion about how these people you've seen, and, it's fun. I enjoy it.
So growing up there, are there any local airfields? Like, what was the thing that really attracted you to aviation from the beginning as a young kid?
So growing up in high school, what attracted me was at Walnut Ridge Airport. It's an old World War II training base. Well, we had a company by the name of UAM, Universal Asset Management, and they had big airliners they would bring in, and all they did was just recycle them. So they would tear them all apart, sell off the good usable parts. And that's what kind of got me into it, because then I had found out that our local community college had an A&P program. So I jumped into that and went through the A&P program, worked for that Universal Asset Management for several years. They ended up closing doors and moving to a new location. So that's when I ended up getting into turbine engines after that. So just driving by that airport and always seeing those big airplanes, it always kind of gave me that wow factor.
Yeah.
And then I knew in high school that I was going to go to that local community college for that A&P course, because I was all about it. So
it's interesting how those times, I think of myself as a kid driving by an airport, the little ones, the general aviation airports,
yep.
Seeing either helicopters, airplanes, and really being drawn. And then you talk twice now about timing, how timing really plays an impact on the trajectory of your career and the opportunities that exist. Pretty cool to hear about the way the timing of those things worked out for you both, in the beginning and to where you are now in that part of your career.
Right.
But it kind of leads us into the larger picture of recruitment and retention in our industry. Everybody's struggling to find folks, and I know, or I'd at least imagine you're no different, and your part of the world's no different. Can you talk about where you guys are with recruitment and retention, and whether you guys have seen any successful strategies, as far as recruiting folks, not only to your company, but to the industry as a whole?
Recruitment's always been really tough for us, as it is for any company. I don't think it's any different for anybody. Right now we're looking for a lot of positions, from anywhere from technicians to NDT to engineering to financial accounting, human resource. I mean, we have a lot of positions open. As far as technicians, when it comes to hiring them, we actually have on the back of our application just a small ruler test, and it's if you can read 6 inches, all the marks on 6 inches. But on the directions, I actually tell you exactly how to do it, and it works really well. So, and you can pass this little simple quiz that might have 10 answers if you just read the direction. Well, 9 times out of 10, nobody ever reads the directions. They just go in and start marking it. Well, they end up missing it. So we use that as kind of a filter to not waste our time with folks that are not willing to read direction, because everything in our industry is paperwork based, and you've got to read the direction. You can't do anything on a blade or a helicopter or anything without some kind of documentation that tells you how to do it and when to do it. So
That's really
So that
interesting.
helps. It helps filter out some of the riffraff, per se.
Yeah.
But it also kind of hurts us too. But
It's hard. We talk about standards, and I think a lot of folks, given the issues we have and the difficulty we have with recruiting folks, you're tempted to look at how do we reduce standards, or should we reduce standards to fill these spots? And I think you guys are doing the right thing. We can't reduce standards because there's so much at risk with what we're doing.
There is. And that's what we tell our current employees all the time. Say, man, these are critical items. People are flying this. And I go back to an old guy always told me, when you sign off like an annual or something on an aircraft, he said, man, you never know. That airplane might be flying over a school that your kids are going to school at. He said, the last thing you want is that airplane to crash. So we really take our integrity to the extreme. And, one thing also on the recruitment, working for a company like us, yes, we're a smaller company, but we're really big on family. So I don't, like some of the employees will try to miss their kids' events to go to work, and I'm all about it. I'm grateful that they're dedicated to work, but I actually will get on to them for missing their kids' events. I'm like, do not miss your family events. Yeah. Go and be with them, because work will be here tomorrow. Your kids will grow up.
Yeah.
So we're really big on family here, and that helps. That attracts a lot of people to come work for us. So.
Yeah, I mean, we recently had Clint Pulver on the podcast. He's got a book titled "I Love It Here," and he talks about that in depth, talking about how people don't quit jobs; they quit bosses, right? And the culture that you create within the company that you have, which you've developed, really is what makes people want to stay or go.
Right.
And you've created an environment where people want to stay.
Right.
It's much harder to recruit new folks than it is to retain good talent and good employees that you already got. So I love what you've done with that. And it's 100% true about kids. It's easy and tempting to be like, it's a nuisance or it's a hassle to go to this thing. But like you said, it only happens once, so I love that you guys have done that. That's really cool.
Yeah. I'm really big on family, and just, I don't want them to stress out over work. I don't want them, I know we have our moments where it's really intense, but in every business has its situations where things go south, things get messed up. And what I always tell these guys is I'm not angry at them as an individual. I'm just kind of frustrated at the situation, and let's just work through it so we can hit a solution. So I also try to bring that environment that they're not timid or scared or worried about getting in trouble. So no, we're just going to learn from our mistakes and keep pushing forward.
That culture is huge, developing that where if you do something wrong, you're not, you own it and you learn from it versus, being punished for it. And then someone's afraid then to come forward and be like, hey, this happened. And, they try and bury it or hide it versus just, hey, this is what happened. But on the topic of recruitment, I want to touch on the MRO conference real quick, because you guys are going to be at both the Kelowna conference and the Irving conference. Thank you guys for going. We're really hopeful that that'll be I won't say a solution, but we're helping to contribute to the solution as far as the recruitment stuff goes. Opening up spots for students to come that are in A&P school for free. Doing stuff like that. Looking for folks that are looking for jobs, being able to talk to people like yourself who have positions open. Right. So we're hoping to assist in that way with the conferences. But any insight from you on the importance of a conference like this is dedicated to rotorcraft maintenance as compared to the big, fixed wing type things you see?
I think this one will be a lot better in a way that it's more focused on exactly what this helicopter industry needs. It focuses on directly to the MROs. It focuses directly on recruitment, and it gives people, I guess, a smaller base to have that one-on-one conversation with everybody, and that means a lot to these people today, and it still means a lot to me to get in front of these people, because so many times that I talk to people on the phone and I never get to meet them. When you have these conferences like this, I finally get to meet them. You get to shake their hand. You get to take them out to dinner. You get that real personable relationship, and that really matters in this industry.
Yeah. It's a small community, and
it really is. It really is.
The ability to pick up the phone and call somebody by name versus dialing a number and be like, hey, is this sounds like that's so important,
Right.
Learning who you can count on for certain things, learning lessons from people that have already been taught the hard way, so you don't have to repeat that lesson the hard way yourself. The education and training that's going to take place at the conference is amazing. Leslie Ferry's done an amazing job putting this together. Tons of opportunity. You're going to be a part of some of that. Can you talk about a little bit of what you're going to do there as far as the panel may go, or some of the stuff that you're going to be involved with?
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Yeah, we're going to do a panel discussion at each location, talking about DSX and just blade maintenance in general. We also hope to educate a lot of operators and maintainers of things to look for, because a lot of operators and maintainers, they're pretty skittish of blades in general. Well, a lot of times we want to educate everyone of things that they can do on their own, where they thought maybe it's a little too much, because we don't want to have to see all these helicopters have downtime, and we don't want to always see, yes, we're here to make money, but we don't want to see them have to spend money that they don't have to.
Right.
So we want to educate a little bit of things they can do to help the blades progress forward, and to do preventative maintenance before the blade gets to a point that it has to come to a repair facility like ours.
Yeah. I think now's a good opportunity to just kind of talk about what DSX, what Dragon Skin is, I guess briefly, because we're going to dig into some of the nuances of it. But what is Dragon Skin, and how will that benefit our community as a whole?
So Dragon Skin Extreme it's a coating. It's a kind of similar to a polyurethane coating that is applied to the leading edge of the rotor blade. Depending on the blade, it could be applied from either 1 inch up to 4 inches from the leading edge to the aft side. And what it is it is a corrosion and erosion preventative coating. So when the blade flies through its life, underneath the coating is protected from corrosion and erosion. When we first developed it, we knew it was a good thing. We didn't really understand how good it was because we needed some more time with it. What we have found is that it can last in upwards of 20 years.
Wow.
We got excess of 8,000 hours operating on it. Compared to when an operator puts on blade tape, 3M blade tape, which that's the standard norm, and it works decent for its purpose. It just doesn't stay on. So that's where we bring the coating on, because it never comes off. It lasts the full lifetime of the blade. It never erodes. We've had blades time out with it, and it's fascinating how it works.
The concept and idea is awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious to find out some of the backstory on how these things came to be. Was this an accidental discovery, or was this something you came to with intentionality?
It was kind of both, to be honest. So the previous owner actually was the guy that developed it. And this was back in the early 2000s, around 2002. He was using a product called Task, which was a great product, and the military was using it. They even still use it slightly today. And the guy he was buying it from passed away in an airplane crash in a T-6. The wing fell off of it and spiraled down. Sad situation. Well, at the time, we were working on a lot of Cobra blades, and all those Cobra blades were going overseas. And at the moment, we were using his product Task as an erosion barrier for this blade. And with him passing away, there was a period of time that we couldn't get it. So he essentially puts on his little white coat and he just starts messing with different materials. And it takes several years for him to find the right concoction. But it was just a lot of trial and error. Put it on a blade, take it to the blaster, blast it, see if it holds up, if it don't hold up. So it went on for several years. And luckily, from when Rotorcraft started in 1992, it had the ability to have access to a couple of the original engineers from like Bell Helicopter, William Underhill and Herman Waldrop. They were outstanding engineers. William Underhill created the first metal main rotor blade for the Bell 47. He created all the 206 series and just on and on. He even got Bell into the fiberglass composite blades. And then like Herman was his right-hand man. So we had all this extensive knowledge of blades brought to us. So we understood what we were looking for. We just had to master the recipe. It was about 2006 when he mastered the recipe. He said, all right, I found the two components, mix them together. This is what works. And after that, we started looking at the FAA approval process. And we looked at all different areas. We looked at your PMA, we looked at STC, we looked at all the different avenues. And what he found was the best avenue was a repair specification. So it's approved under a FAA DER under a repair Part 145 repair specification. So when you bring your blade in, we're going to do the normal repair or overhaul of the blade. The DSX is applied during that process, and it's signed off with an 8130. So, and when he got it approved, in about 2006, when they're getting ready to move into this process of getting it approved, the FAA, Jimmy and his engineer Herb, they kind of presented it to the FAA. The FAA said, all right, well, you got to do all these tests to prove this. So they went through a series of flight testing blades up against bare blades, blades with blade tape, and then the blades with DSX. So it took about 6 years of going through testing, analysis, and all that. And then in December of 2012 is when it received its FAA approval.
Wow. And nothing's ever quick with the FAA, that's for sure.
No, this is not.
The cool thing about the time that it took to get that approval was the test that the series of tests that you went through, and you really saw the capabilities that existed with this product.
Right. That is right.
Before we get too deep into the weeds on the application process and what it takes to get through that, you talked about, aircraft going back to the Middle East and talking about erosion. So if I heard you correctly, this was originally developed to deal with the erosion side of the issue, whereas now this really is a erosion and corrosion protectant, right?
Right.
Can you talk about the difference between erosion and corrosion?
What you see on a lot of these blades, erosion, of course, is the first culprit that starts. After a blade comes out new or it comes out of fresh overhaul, it has a beautiful, leading edge. It has a beautiful abrasion strip. Everything's just perfect. Well, the moment it starts flying, within 50 to 100 hours, erosion already starts to take place. And that can be from just fine dust in the air to coarse dust or even rain, which a lot of people don't realize that rain is one of the most erosive things for a rotor blade there is. So if a helicopter flies through rain, it takes a beating. And that's why a lot of helicopters they will not fly in those environments. And when erosion starts to take place, it'll start really slow, but then it gradually gets worse. It kind of has a snowball effect. It's like once that surface is penetrated, it just keeps on going. Well, then once the surface is penetrated with erosion, that's where corrosion sets in. Because then when the aircraft stops, sits for any period of time, it could be a small period of time or a long period of time, the corrosion just starts growing. And then that corrosion, it's just like a cancer. You can't stop it once it starts. It's very impossible. And so and it's really rough on birds that are near saltwater environments. It is very brutal on them. Just a little bit of erosion happens, then the corrosion's falling right back in behind it. So
it's interesting because, you think of corrosion in, like you brought up with saltwater environments, you think about a lot of these coastal areas where they're most at risk to corrosion issues. But the way you talk about erosion kind of being the first culprit that leads to corrosion, I mean, that's everywhere, right? Everywhere there's fine particulates in the air that we're flying through. And I hate to admit it, but the area that I was in, flying in Ontario and Southern California, the air quality is so bad. You can see the air.
Yep.
We'd wash the ship and we'd come back and land, and the leading edge of the cross tube, you run your finger across it.
Yep.
And your finger's brown and there's a mark on the skid like that. Those contaminants that we're flying in are brutal.
They are.
Can you talk about the protection that not only exists from water and moisture, but from the contaminants that are in the air that we're flying through?
Yeah. So one thing that a lot of our agricultural customers love is essentially when the DSX coating is applied, it's applied to the spar of the main rotor blade, which is the most critical point of that entire rotor blade. And that's the point that you want to keep the most safe, the most protected. When these ag operators are flying in low, dusty, sandy environments, well, they're also spraying chemicals. Well, these chemicals, the corrosion loves that stuff. It just takes it, and it's like corrosion on steroids at that point because it has all these chemicals in it. So that's one thing that the DSX protects from is we haven't found any chemical yet that can, essentially make DSX come off or affect it in any way. And these agriculture guys are spraying some pretty harsh chemicals. So it's really fascinating. We would have these agriculture guys bring in the blades, and literally the paint would be melted off these blades from the chemicals they were spraying.
Wow.
And it's same for the whole aircraft. And so they'd bring us in the blades. We would, paint them back up. Well, then we would put the coating on and send them back out. Well, then they were no longer having these problems with loss of, paint, because the coating is that barrier on the leading edge that catches everything and stops it from penetrating into underneath the paint.
Wow.
So it really gives it that ability to protect, yes, the leading edge of the blade, but also the aft body of the blade, because it never allows chemical or corrosion or anything to penetrate through that paint.
As you're talking about that, I envisioned some of the videos I've seen of helicopters flying, the crop dusting helicopters flying, and you can see the
Yep.
air moving the chemicals up above the rotor system and back down.
That's right.
So I can only imagine, how what you're saying is important, not just taking care of that leading edge, but taking care of the whole system, the whole blade
That's
as a
right.
whole, because
Yep.
it's fully, saturated in that environment.
That's right. That's right.
Being that you guys are a blade repair shop in general, this is kind of a random question, but what mission set, and maybe you answered the question already, do you find to be most affected by corrosion and erosion? Would you say it's the ag industry, or would you say it's firefighting? What industry do you get?
I would say, three areas. Ag and fire is kind of two of your main ones for the civilian world, and then of course military operations.
Right.
Those three operations take a beating, and those are the three industries that we look at most. I cut my teeth in the ag industry, so I'm of course very much pro the ag guys. I really go above and beyond to take care of them and the firefighting crew. But they are the ones that need it most because they're flying in some very harsh environments.
Yeah, the firefighting side of, for me, strikes a chord. Living in Southern California, we're plagued with fires year round now, and that's not going to change anytime soon. I think if anything, it's only going to continue to get worse.
That's right.
So really cool that you guys have offered a solution to a problem that exists. And you talk about keeping the aircraft flying. This is a product that essentially helps keep those firefighting aircraft up and able to go. Earlier, you talked about having this coating applied when you've got a major overhaul that's ongoing. Can you talk about best practice if somebody's interested in having this applied to their blades? When would be the best time, and how long can they expect for that process to take?
So typically we'll always tell a lot of these customers, they'll call and start getting quotes and stuff like that. And we always tell them, hey, let's wait till typically the end of your season, your ag season, your fire season, because we want to work around the aircraft's timing, not really our timing, but the aircraft. When the aircraft is going to be down for maintenance, pull those blades off, send us to them, and we'll start doing the work. Because we don't ever want to see an operator down. What's one thing we have always focused on is keeping the operators flying. I'm always trying to give them solutions to get them through the season, and then we'll do the bigger stuff later on. And typically, when they do put their aircraft down, the aircraft is down from anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks for maintenance. Typically, average set of blades can be completed in a three-week period, depending on what's needed. Some of them go as far as 8 weeks to get completed. It just depends on what is needed, what size of blades we're working on. But the average kind of comes in there around 4 to 6 weeks, to be honest.
Okay. Again, go back to California. Fire season doesn't seem to find it in here.
No, it does not.
There's a lot of predictability with what you're talking about, right? A lot of industries and segments have somewhat of a predictable schedule that they can follow and find a good time period to ship that stuff in and have it done.
And we work with operators. They kind of tell us what their timelines are, and we kind of schedule them a position in the blade shop. Okay, your time is coming up. Are you ready to do this? They'll send the blades in. We try to work with everybody on their own timelines.
Can you talk a little bit about the application process? We kind of breezed over it a bit ago, but is it like a paint booth where this is applied, or what does that actually look like?
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
So when a blade comes in, it's entered into the repair station, of course. It goes through a set of preliminary inspections, and we want to make sure the blade kind of goes through a qualification criteria, because we want to make sure the blade is in really good shape, because DSX right now has just a perfect reputation, and we want to keep it that way. So we make sure that the blades that we apply the DSX to are very good shape. We always recommend that the blade have at least half-life remaining. We can go a little bit. We can fudge it either which way. Of course, new blades are that's a no-brainer. Now, we do that a lot. Brand new blades will come right from the OEM straight to us. We'll apply the coating, and then back out it goes. But when the blade comes in, it goes through, we strip it all down. It goes through quite a bit of NDT inspection, several different methods from eddy current to ultrasound to penetrant. And even X-ray, and we do all that right here in-house. Once we determine that, hey, this blade, it's a good candidate, and then we'll start that process. We make sure the blade doesn't need any other repairs. If it does, then we'll do those repairs. We'll really work hard on the spar to really make sure we have no corrosion. We really inspect all the hardware that's attached to it. If there's any screws or anything like that, we really look it over. It goes through a process. It's several steps to make sure that we don't have any corrosion, we don't have any erosion left over, and make sure that spar's integrity is better than perfect. And then it goes and we spray the DSX on it. It is a spray application. We have different applications. It's a spray application. It could be a brushable application, or we have a moldable application. So the blade can be put into a mold and it's injected. When the blade comes out, essentially it's done. On the low scale, we do spray. We spray it, and then the blade comes out. And then we have a sanding application that we sand the coating, and we get that contour to exactly where it's supposed to be. We have little gauges that we put on the blades to verify that contour throughout the whole process. We work extremely hard on that contour. We really work hard at the airfoil because that is one of the most important parts of that blade.
Yeah.
When we get ready to do DSX on any given blade, it takes about 2 to 3 days to get that process from the beginnings of the taping off where it'll go all the way to the finish up. And then it goes through a curing process, which it goes into our curing room. It just cures in about 24 hours. And then we go through a fill and fare process to make sure that, again, that airfoil is just the way it needs to be.
What you're describing is interesting because I think of paint a lot of times. And I always ask this question and people look at me like I'm crazy. But I'm always curious. Like we were just out at Metro Aviation in their paint booth. Amazing facility, by the way. And I asked about the weight of paint and how much weight that typically adds to an aircraft. And obviously it depends on not only the aircraft size, but the type of paint they're using and a bunch of factors. But when it comes to what you're talking about, can you talk about not just if there's any weight added to the aircraft as a whole, but how that may or may not affect the flight characteristics of the aircraft after it's been applied?
So DSX, it does not add any weight to the blade itself. It is very minute. That was part of the testing process, as we had to prove that our coating was no different than blade tape, which was already an industry standard. And we proved that concept. So when we apply the coating, we're able to take the blade to the master span moment and chord moment numbers for balancing of the blade. And that's really important for these blades, is that you're able to stay within that small window for the master span moment and chord moment. And yes, you're correct. Paint, prime and paint, it makes a big difference on blades. Too many times, a lot of customers come to say, hey, I can't get my blade to fly. And a lot of times it's a paint issue. They have too much paint. They've tried to paint it themselves, which is fine. They're welcome to. It's just, if you don't understand the type of paint you're putting on and you don't understand exactly how to put it on, you can change the weight characteristics and how that blade flies dramatically just from paint. So when we put the coating on or we put prime and paint on, there's a process to understand how you're putting it on and how that affects balance. So that when a blade is entered into our repair station, it's balanced. It could be balanced up to 10 times throughout the process, because we're always watching. After everything we do, we're watching that balance, and we can kind of keep it in check during the whole process.
I hadn't really thought about the track and balance side of things much as it pertains to paint until you brought that up. You know, I imagine you could save some time and headache if you had that not only properly painted, but coated as well, you know.
That's right. Yeah. And that's one thing we strive for, is we really work hard on our balance side. Because when the mechanic or the operator pulls the blade out and he strings it and he gets it ready for the head, we don't want him pissed off at us because we didn't do our job right.
Right.
So we really work hard at that balance to where he's having to do the minimum amount of maintenance runs to get that track and balance where it needs to be. And we're able to help on the tracking because we work extremely hard on that airfoil during the application process, so that he's not having to bend the trim tabs or over there working on the head to sweep it or do anything. We really work hard to make his life easier.
Can you talk about some qualifying criteria or disqualifying criteria? So if I'm an operator and I want to send something in, is there something I could look at and be like, hey, I would like to have this submitted for the application at DSX, but I've got this problem. This is disqualifying. Is there anything like that you can advise people on?
Typically, if a blade, of course, has a lot excess time on it, we kind of shy away from it. And we're not shying away from it because we don't think the blade is a good candidate. We're also trying to, I guess, watch out for their investment. You know, we don't want you spending that kind of money when it's, hey, let's wait till you purchase another set of blades or something. What we don't like to see is a blade that comes in and has like excess repairs from, previous incidents or anything like that. We don't want to put DSX on a blade that's got a lot of repairs. We want a pretty good blade. We don't mind small repairs, but we want to kind of stay away from them. large stuff. Typically, also, if we find that erosion or corrosion has gone too far, we kind of shy away from it. We don't recommend DSX to be applied because, you've lost a lot of that integrity of the leading edge spar if you have a lot of corrosion and erosion. And then when we dress that out, there's very tight limits when you dress those blades. And you're only allowed to lose so much material. So we always look for a lot of just the overall quality of the blade, where it's kept. We also look at what environment they're in. Like we just had a local sheriff's department out of Florida bring in a set of blades, had quite a bit of corrosion. Luckily, it's all surface corrosion, so it's not going to be a big factor. We'll be able to clean it up and make it work. And unfortunately, these blades are like almost new. I mean, it's just crazy. Just that short amount of time down in that Florida environment, it has just corroded those blades all to pieces. So we're going to apply the coating, really protect those spars and get them back up and running.
Would you say that, and I'm interested in, from the weather perspective, would you say that the Florida region, or the southeastern portion of the U.S., at least in North America, is one of the areas that's most at risk to corrosion and erosion because of the environment they're flying in?
Yes, corrosion is a big problem for anywhere that's potentially attached to that coastline. You see a lot of erosion out of California and Arizona area because it's just a really dry, dusty environment.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on the other side of the U.S. is where you still get erosion, but the corrosion is 10 times worse because it's such a moist and salty environment.
Yeah, it's, being in California, I'm not used to the humidity. It's typically in the 20% relative humidity area where I am. So I go back to visit my dad in South Carolina. And the first thing I notice is his kitchen windows are fogged over with humidity. You can actually see, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
It's such a different environment from what I'm used to. But, as it pertains to the flight environment, it's crazy how that impacts operations in its entirety. It's wild.
Yeah.
Random question before another random question. Dragon skin. How did you come up with the name Dragon Skin?
So the previous owner actually came up with it. So as they're doing their application with the FAA and getting FAA approval on this, the FAA said, "Hey, you got to come up with a name for this. You can't just do nothing. You got to call it something." So he just out of the blue came up with Dragon Skin Extreme. And of course, Extreme's with an X, and he just kind of pulled that out of the blue. And it just stuck, and it was such a good fit, and we've just carried it with it, and it's been a great name for it.
That's cool. It's a cool name. It's great for marketing. It's easy to remember. All the things that from a marketing standpoint you want, right? So
we really like how it's it kind of expresses how tough it is. That was kind of what he was after.
Second random question, and this kind of it's off the topic of dragon skin a little bit, but we look for birds all the time in flight. Bird strikes are not ideal, but I've been a part of a couple bird strikes where it just impacted the rotor system, and we've had to send blades back for an inspection and repair. What's the most interesting or I guess most catastrophic thing you've seen come across the shop that you're like, holy cow?
I mean, I've seen a lot of bird strikes come through, and typically they, those birds, they're soft when they're just sitting there, but when that blade is flying, it turns into like a rock, essentially. And without the DSX, it does a number on the blade. It usually leaves a pretty harsh indentation into the spar, or it'll kind of hit the blade skin. It'll puncture the blade skin. We've actually had customers with the DSX coating actually hit. I think it was this year, he hit a duck.
Oh, geez.
He hit about a 3-pound duck. And being that the coating was on there, it protected that spar and never even damaged it. So He hit the duck, obliterated it, of course. And then after he landed, he went up there and was picking small bone fragments out of the DSX.
Wow. That's wild.
But it didn't harm the blade a bit. The DSX was there and it kept it protected.
The last one that I was a part of, land, of course, goes in for inspection. They pull the blade off, and the measuring tools that they use to figure out how deep the gash is in the blade is amazing. Seeing the precision that's involved in figuring out how deep that goes. But it was just deep enough to where it had to be sent back, and we were without aircraft for some time because the rotors are gone. So a small investment in the grand scheme of things to apply DSX to prevent a situation like that. And I actually hadn't considered that is helpful in those situations as well.
And unfortunately, we've had guys that have, hit wires. Luckily, they've lived through it, and the wires just kind of hit the coating and just slide off of it. That coating has such a durability and such a soft protection at the same time that it can handle small to medium impact without having to harm the blade. And it's been fascinating every time we see blades come back, and the blades never come back to us for the coating to be repaired. They're coming back to us because they need a paint job, or believe it or not, we get more damage from the aircraft being on the ground than anywhere else. Just ground crews not looking, they hit it, something, or they'll hit the blade on a hangar door. So we'll bring the blade back, and the coating, what's fascinating, when we send it out, it's very nice, it's very smooth, it looks great, but the DSX actually gets better with time, because when it comes back to us after flying for 5 years and got about 4,000 hours on it, it's so just clean and slick, and it's just a very beautiful product when it comes back. And you can still see in the coating after all that time some of the original workmanship marks from our sanders and stuff still in the coating from when we worked on it all those years ago.
That's crazy. What are you seeing as far as life application goes with a blade that has DSX applied? This podcast is powered by Vertical Magazine, which is more than just your favorite Rotorcraft publication. Vertical's grown far beyond print to become a dynamic multimedia brand that keeps you informed, inspired, and connected. With digital access via verticalmag.com, podcasts on the HeliCAST platform, Rotorcraft buying and selling via helitrader.com, helicopter maintenance conferences, extensive reach across social media, and an impressive catalog of visual content, visit verticalmag.com to learn more.
Here recently, we had an OH58 blade. We applied the coating applied to that blade back when it was fairly new. It had 600 hours on it when we applied it. That was in 2013. That blade flew out its full life, which has a 3,600 hour life on that blade. So we got just over 3,000 hours on it. And that was in 2021 when that blade was pulled out of service. So, and that was on that particular blade. We have it on Cobra blades on the AH1. We've seen excess of 8,000 hours. It's been out there operating since 2013 and still has not come back in. So we are seeing it really go the long legs. So
it's a one-time application. You're not having that come back at some point for a reapplication of the product?
Right. No, it's a one-time application, and we warranty that. It's a guaranteed. If you ever have anything issue, bring it back. We'll coat it, no cost to you, get you back out. So we guarantee that coating the life of the blade.
Since 2012 in the initial approval, can you talk about some of the customers, where you're seeing them operate, some of the success stories that you're hearing as a result of those operations? And, whether this is international as well.
Yeah. So we've got, customers across the U.S., up Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, Arizona, Florida. I mean, it's just very broad here in the U.S. And one thing that a lot of these customers, they always want to try to lay the claim, my blade flies so much better. And be careful with that. It doesn't really fly better. It's flying more consistently, because one thing that coating provides is you have a perfect airfoil from day one to 10 or 15 years from now, or 10 hours all the way up to 5,000 hours. You always have that same perfect airfoil, to where on a normal blade, once that erosion starts, the airfoil now changes. So the aircraft is having to work harder to spin those blades because your airfoil is different. So that also makes the lift different. So one thing that DSX was always been able to provide is that constant. It gives that pure consistency. And that's what a lot of these customers are seeing. They're not seeing better performance, they're seeing consistent performance. And that makes a huge difference. We've got customers also in other parts of the world, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, France, Canada. It's just across the world. We do a lot of stuff over in the Middle East, a lot of stuff for Israel. So it's really fascinating where this ends up.
That's cool. As a pilot, performance planning is really important, and a lot of times you're looking for every ounce of power you can get to accomplish whatever mission you're wanting to do. So the fact that what you're talking about, the consistency of performance, that's important, so
it is.
I love what you guys are doing on that front as well. I'm curious, corrosion and erosion, those problems exist in other components of the aircraft as well. Can you talk about whether there's other components in the aircraft that might be a good candidate to be used in, whether it's tail rotor or anything else?
Yeah, we've done it. It can be applied to tail rotors. Tail rotors are always, where you get into with them is it comes down to cost on a tail rotor blade. And it also depends on the environment you're working in. And tail rotors are also very critical items. So the criteria for doing a tail rotor, it's really stringent on making sure that blade is perfect before we apply the coating. And then also, it comes down to cost. Typically, if you can purchase another tail rotor blade, they will go do that because it just doesn't justify the cost. Or the turn time. The turn time is still about the same because it takes just as many man hours to work on a tail rotor as it does a main rotor. Just because they're smaller doesn't really mean anything. You're still putting the same effort into that integrity as you would a main rotor blade.
Yeah, that makes sense. The topic of cost is interesting as well. Can you talk about how this, it essentially affects the bottom line of operators and how it might improve some of the reduction in costs?
One thing that our operators are always, are after the longevity of their blades and not always having to go back to a blade shop every time you turn around. And we've seen that in the past. Operators that don't do the coating, we'll see those blades in its lifetime come through the facility probably 4 to 5 times in a 5,000 hour period. And it's fine. That's great for us. Or you apply the coating and I will not ever see that blade again unless you have some damage elsewhere on the blade, but it will not be coming in for corrosion or erosion. And that's what really kind of is a driving cost for a lot of these operators, is that I can go and get my blade coated one time, and then I ain't got to worry about going back to the blade shop again unless I just have an incident.
Yeah, then you talk about being on the ground, unable to respond. That those instances go away because your blades, in theory, are staying with you,
right?
Able to respond to whatever mission set you're a part of.
And that's why a lot of our military operators, they're so intrigued on it, because it always keeps them at a mission ready state. They're not always worried about having to pull a blade off for damage or hitting small FOD or anything. That DSX always gives them that ability for mission readiness at all times.
Man, this is cool. Something that I think about, corrosion and erosion are kind of the forefront, especially as it pertains like bird strikes and stuff. With the everyday environment that we're flying in, what you're talking about, the protectant that it offers, the investment that you put into it, ultimately paying dividends because of the things we're talking about. Really cool. Thank you for taking time to talk about that. Before we got online, we talked a little bit about the MRO conference again, and you talked about maybe bringing some small blades, some samples essentially of this product up. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So like at some of the bigger shows, we'll bring a stand that's got full length blades on it that has the coating applied. That way people can see it, touch it, feel it. It makes a big difference when you can see it and instead of just looking at a picture on a brochure. So at the MRO conferences, we're going to take blade sections. They may be about 3 foot long, and we're going to have them on a stand. That way people can see them, touch them. And it'll be different types of blades, from a composite blade to a metal blade, from a Jet Ranger to all the way up to a Cobra, you name it. We'll have several different blades that they can look at. And we think it makes a big difference when you're talking about it, and you can actually show it. And we will also bring blades that have timed out. They've reached their retirement life, so we work with customers and we purchase those blades back from them, and then we'll cut sections out of that and we'll bring it with us so people can see one when it was newly applied versus one that had been flying for 5,000 hours at 20 years. So
I love looking at those breakaway parts, essentially cutting through them and looking at the effects of, or the impacts of corrosion, like you talked about.
Right.
Again, go back to Metro. We were in their blade shop, and they had a blade on the wall that had been struck by lightning.
Yep.
And lightning is something I do not want to fly anywhere near or around. If people in Florida would make fun of me, I flew out of Upland, California, which is, 20 miles or so east of LA. And the mountains east of there, about another 20 miles east, is where we get thunderstorms in the summer, but very infrequently. Whereas, Florida's got thunderstorms and lightning just about every day. But I remember taking off for a mission one time and go to the crosswind, and I can see off in the horizon that Big Bear's got thunderstorms and lightning. I just kept that turn going and went right back home and landed. I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. Can you talk about any experience you've had with blades that have been impacted by lightning?
Yeah. So we've seen every year we see, a handful of blades that'll either be affected directly with lightning or when they fly through high voltage wires. That essentially does the same effect. And it's fascinating because on the lightning strike, it just, when it strikes, it makes little holes throughout the blade, like 2 little melted spots all through the blade. And it ain't nothing to play with. I mean, and I've seen lightning explode parts of the blade. I mean, it's scary, but also fascinating. But it is not something you want to play with there.
I'd rather be fascinated by what I see on the ground versus.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Well, Seth, it's been awesome talking to you. Thank you for going through DSX. Really cool. Excited to see you in Kelowna and Irving, Texas, if not beforehand. Are you going to be at AppsCon by chance?
Yes, I think I will be. Yep.
Okay. Yep. Well, hopefully get a chance to have a cold one at AppsCon and say hello.
No, I'd be glad to.
Yeah. Before we close out, any kind of final thoughts or last things that maybe we didn't touch on that you'd like to talk about?
No, man, I think you really hit them. I think it's a great solution for a lot of operators. Of course, we're always after, what I call the working man operators. That's our bread and butter. We really like working with them, and really looking for solutions for them and helping them keep their aircraft going and for the longevity. That's what we're after.
Well, thanks for not only the product, but the passion you have for the industry. You talk about what you've created and the family that you've created within the company, and that transcends into the overall community as a whole. So thank you for doing that. I wish every operator was like you and had that. But having said that, I think our community is great. Most folks have the passion and the love for the industry that you've got, because it takes that truly,
And over the years, even since 1992, that has always been kind of our mission, was to try to bring a solution to these operators that may not be out there. So a lot of operators that damage their blades that are beyond normal repair, we have the ability to do engineering and to be able to repair those blades and keep them flying. We've also been able to manufacture blades over the years. We're still doing it currently. So, for a lot of these aircraft, the blades are just no longer manufactured for. That's where we kind of step in at every point. We're always looking to help with a solution. So,
love that. Solutions is what we're looking for all the time.
Yep.
So thank you for that. For folks that want to get in touch with you, how could they get in touch with you, and how could they get more info on Dragon Skin and just the services that you guys offer as a whole?
So they're welcome to, of course, call our office at any time. Of course, our telephone number is 870-202-1454. That's our main line. You'll probably end up talking to one of our sales guys, Ricardo or Daniel. They're great guys, very knowledgeable. Of course, you're welcome to email us. We have an info@rotorcraft.biz. Or you're welcome to email me. Mine is just seth.hardage@rotorcraft.biz.
Awesome. Well, looking forward again to seeing you in person and having a cold one. And seeing you in Kelowna and Irving. So until then, we'll catch you later. Thank you, sir.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. Cheers.
Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support. Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
This podcast is powered by Vertical Magazine, which is more than just your favorite Rotorcraft publication. Vertical's grown far beyond print to become a dynamic multimedia brand that keeps you informed, inspired, and connected. With digital access via verticalmag.com, podcasts on the HeliCAST platform, Rotorcraft buying and selling via helitrader.com, helicopter maintenance conferences, extensive reach across social media, and an impressive catalog of visual content, visit verticalmag.com to learn more. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Vertical MRO Podcast, brought to you by Vertical HeliCASTS and in partnership with Vertical Magazine. We hope you gain valuable insights into preventative maintenance, industry challenges, and the innovative solutions like Dragon Skin Extreme, which is shaping the future of rotorcraft maintenance. Special thanks to our guest, Seth Hardage, for sharing his inspiring journey and expertise. And a big thank you to our sponsors, Airbus and Precision Aviation Group, for your continued support. Be sure to follow all the podcasts on the Vertical HeliCASTS platform, including the newly launched Valor Flight Crew podcast, which focuses on the helicopter air ambulance segment, the Real Rescue podcast covering search and rescue operations, the helicopter podcast exploring all aspects of the helicopter community, and the Hangar Z podcast, who promotes the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay safe, stay innovative, and keep moving forward in the world of vertical aviation.